I'm Jorge, 33 years old, a Mexican-American guy who just lost his job after 10 years at a tech company. Last month, during our parents' anniversary dinner, my brother Marcus decided to put on a show. When I mentioned being between jobs, he laughed and said, "Useless. You can't even afford a piece of bread." The table went silent. I didn't argue. I just smiled and walked away. If you want to know how I responded when he called me desperately a week later, drop a comment about where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how bread became my unexpected revenge. Growing up, Marcus and I were never what you'd call close. 4 years older than me, Marcus was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. At least, that's how it felt to me. While my childhood memories are filled with warmth and love, there was always this unspoken expectation hanging in the air. Marcus set the bar, and I was supposed to reach it. Our parents, hard-working immigrants who built a life in Arizona from scratch, wanted the best for us. For them, the best meant stability, traditional success, and social status. Marcus embodied all of that perfectly. He was the athletic one, the student body president, the kid who brought home perfect report cards and trophies. Meanwhile, I was quieter, more interested in taking apart computers than playing football, more fascinated by coding than conquering the social hierarchy of high school. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" became a refrain I heard throughout my teenage years. Not directly, of course. My parents were too loving for that. But it came through in subtle ways. The extra enthusiasm when discussing Marcus's achievements. The slight pause when talking about my interests in technology. As adults, our different paths became even more pronounced. Marcus went the traditional route, and business school corporate job at a prestigious financial firm, marriage to Rebecca, a lawyer from a well-connected family. By 37, he had the perfect house in the suburbs, 2 kids with perfectly pressed clothes, and a lifestyle that screamed success in the most conventional sense. I chose a different path. After college, I jumped into the tech world, working my way up at Innovate Tech, one of the rising stars in software development. I loved the creativity, the problem-solving, the constant evolution of the industry. While I made good money and found genuine fulfillment, my success wasn't as visible or easily understood by our family. "So you just type on computers all day?" my uncle would ask at family gatherings, clearly unimpressed, despite my attempts to explain the complex systems I was helping to build. Marcus never missed an opportunity to highlight the differences in our lifestyles. When I talked about a challenging project, he'd interrupt with stories about his new car or the famous client he'd just landed. When I mentioned a promotion, he'd somehow steer the conversation toward his bonus or the vacation home they were considering. The competition wasn't just one-sided, though. I took pride in working in an industry that was actually changing the world, not just moving money around. I enjoyed the more relaxed culture of tech compared to his buttoned-up corporate world. When Marcus bragged about working 60-hour weeks, I'd casually mention the flexible schedule and remote work options my company offered. At Innovate Tech, I had worked my way up to senior development manager, leading a team of 15 talented developers. We created software solutions for various industries, including retail, healthcare, and, ironically enough, financial services. The work was challenging and rewarding, and despite what my family might have thought, I was good at it. Really good. Then came the restructuring. Despite record profits, the company announced it was streamlining operations, corporate speak for mass layoffs. My entire division was eliminated, with the work being outsourced to cheaper contractors overseas. 10 years of dedication ended with a sterile meeting with HR, a severance package, and 2 weeks to clean out my desk. The layoff hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the job loss. It was the sudden identity crisis. For a decade, I had been Jorge from Innovate Tech, the guy who led successful projects and mentored junior developers. Now who was I? Just another unemployed tech worker in an increasingly competitive market. I spent the first few weeks sending out resumes and taking meetings, putting on a brave face. But as weeks turned into months with only a few interviews and no offers, the confidence began to crack. The industry was experiencing a downturn with hiring freezes at most major companies. The timing couldn't have been worse. Of course, I didn't share the full extent of my struggles with my family. I told them I was exploring opportunities and taking some time to consider my next move. It wasn't entirely untrue. I was indeed thinking about what I wanted from my career, but it glossed over the growing anxiety as my savings began to dwindle. Marcus, with his usual sensitivity, had started making little comments during our occasional family gatherings. Still on vacation, Jorge or some of us have to work for a living. Each comment stung more than I cared to admit, but I brushed them off with a smile and a shrug. What else could I do? Admit that I was beginning to worry, that the confident tech professional was starting to doubt himself. Not a chance. Especially not in front of Marcus. Little did I know that the simmering tension between us was about to boil over at what should have been a joyous family occasion, our parents' 40th wedding anniversary dinner. The evening of my parents' 40th anniversary celebration arrived with all the pomp and circumstance you'd expect from such a milestone. Mom and Dad had rented out the private room at Castellano's, their favorite Italian restaurant, where they'd had their first date 4 decades earlier. The place was transformed with soft lighting white roses, Mom's favorite, and photos from their years together displayed on easels around the room. I arrived early to help set up, wearing my best navy suit. Not new, but well-maintained and still stylish. As family members began to arrive, the room filled with the warm chaos of greetings, laughter, and the inevitable questions about each other's lives. Jorge, so good to see you, my Aunt Lucia said, pulling me into a tight hug that smelled of her signature perfume. How's work going? Your mother mentioned you're between positions right now. And so it began. Throughout the cocktail hour, I fielded variations of the same question from relatives I hadn't seen in months or even years. I kept my answers upbeat and vague, talking about exploring new opportunities and taking time to find the right fit, all while sipping my single glass of wine slowly to make it last the evening. I couldn't afford to be loose-lipped or loose with my wallet these days. My cousin Sophia, always kind, tried to help by steering conversations toward my past accomplishments. Jorge created this amazing inventory system for his last company, she'd say. Or did you know, Jorge led a team that developed software used by major hospitals. I appreciated her efforts, but they only seemed to highlight the contrast between what I had been and what I was now. The dinner was scheduled to start at 7, but by 7:30 one seat remained conspicuously empty. Marcus was running late as usual. My parents kept glancing at the door, my father checking his watch with increasing frequency, while my mother assured everyone that he must be caught in traffic or probably just wrapping up something important at work. At 7:45, just as the servers were bringing out the first course, Marcus made his grand entrance. He wore a clearly new charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, his Rolex catching the light as he waved enthusiastically to the room. Behind him, Rebecca followed in a designer dress, looking polished and perfect as always. Sorry we're late, everyone, Marcus announced without a hint of actual remorse. Had to wrap up a call with Tokyo. You know how it is when you're handling international accounts. My father beamed with pride while my mother rushed over to embrace them both. The important thing is that you're here now, she said, guiding them to their seats. As luck would have it, Marcus and Rebecca were seated directly across from me at the long table. While everyone began eating their antipasto, Marcus launched into a detailed account of his latest triumph at work. Just closed the Henderson acquisition, he announced to the table at large. Biggest deal of the quarter. The partners are talking about an early promotion to senior vice president. He took a large bite of prosciutto and continued talking while chewing. Just put a deposit down on a new Mercedes, too. The S-Class. Rebecca deserves only the best, right, honey? Rebecca smiled tightly and nodded. I sometimes wondered if she was as impressed by his boasting as he assumed everyone should be. Throughout the first and second courses, Marcus dominated the conversation, barely letting our parents, the supposed guests of honor, get a word in about their 40 years together. When our father tried to tell the story of how he proposed, Marcus somehow turned it into an anecdote about his own engagement to Rebecca, complete with details about the cost of the ring. The conversation eventually circled back to me when my grandmother innocently asked about my job search. I've had some promising interviews, I said carefully. And I'm exploring a few ideas of my own, actually. There's this concept I've been developing that combines tech solutions with food distribution. Marcus snorted, interrupting me mid-sentence. Another one of your ideas, huh? Whatever happened to that app you were talking about last Christmas? The one that was going to revolutionize something or other. That was just a side project, I explained, feeling my cheeks grow warm. This is different. I've done market research. And market research, Marcus repeated with a laugh. Is that what unemployed people call browsing the internet these days? A few relatives chuckled uncomfortably. My mother shot Marcus a warning look which he either didn't see or chose to ignore. I'm serious about this. I insisted, trying to keep my voice level. There's a real opportunity in connecting small bakeries with consumers through technology, streamlining the production process to reduce waste while improving quality and... Bakeries, Marcus interrupted again, louder this time. You lost your fancy tech job and now you're what? Interested in bread. He laughed, looking around the table for support, finding it only in the awkward smiles of relatives too uncomfortable to challenge him. I took a deep breath. The food tech industry is actually growing rapidly with significant investment. Let me get this straight, Marcus said, putting down his fork with exaggerated care. You who can't even hold down a real job, think you're going to teach bakers how to make bread. That's rich. He shook his head, looking around the table with a smirk. Next, he'll tell us he's going to be a millionaire selling sourdough starters. The table fell uncomfortably silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, a mixture of pity and second-hand embarrassment that made my stomach churn. I'm just exploring options, I said quietly, trying to salvage some dignity. Marcus raised his eyebrow, his expression condescending. Here's an option for you. Get a real job. Any job. Because right now you're 33, living off savings, about to move back in with mom and dad. That's enough, Marcus, our father finally interjected, but it was too late. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine, voice dripping with contempt. Face it, Jorge. You're useless. You can't even afford a piece of bread, let alone start some ridiculous bread business. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I saw my mother's face fall, my father's jaw tighten, and various relatives suddenly becoming very interested in their pasta. Rebecca placed a hand on Marcus's arm, whispering something in his ear that he shrugged off. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The hurt was there, burning hot and sharp, but alongside it came a strange calm. I could have shouted back, could have listed my accomplishments, could have pointed out his own insecurities that drove him to belittle others. I could have mentioned the rumors I'd heard about trouble at his firm. Instead, I simply smiled, folded my napkin neatly, and placed it beside my half-eaten entree. I stood up, slowly reached into my wallet and placed two $20 bills on the table, more than I could really afford, but worth it for what I was about to do. Thanks for a lovely evening, I said, to no one in particular. Congratulations again, Mom and Dad. 40 years is quite an achievement. Without another word, I walked out of the restaurant, Marcus's laughter following me to the door. But as I stepped into the cool night air, I wasn't thinking about his mockery. I was thinking about bread and technology, and how sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty isn't a comeback, it's success. The drive home from Castellanos was a blur. My hands gripped the steering wheel of my aging Honda Civic so tightly that my knuckles turned white, but strangely, I wasn't angry. Instead, a curious sense of clarity washed over me as streetlights flashed by. Marcus's words echoed in my mind. You can't even afford a piece of bread. Intended as an insult, those words were inadvertently crystallizing an idea that had been forming in the back of my mind for months. I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, a modest complex that had seemed like a smart financial decision when I signed the lease 3 years ago. Now, with my savings dwindling, even this reasonable rent was becoming a concern. I sat in my car for a few minutes, engine off, staring at nothing in particular as my thoughts raced. The truth was, I had been playing it safe for too long. At Innovate Tech, I'd helped build successful systems for other companies, while my own ideas remained just that, ideas sketched out in notebooks or discussed over beers with colleagues but never pursued. The layoff had been devastating. But maybe it was also an opportunity. A push I needed to finally take a risk. Inside my apartment, I went straight to my home office. Really just a corner of my living room with a desk and computer. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick notebook labeled Project ideas. Flipping through pages of concepts and abandoned brainstorms, I stopped at one marked BreadConnect from almost a year ago. The idea had come to me while waiting in line at Brickhouse Bakery, watching the owner, an artisan baker named Frank, apologize to customers as he sold out of his famous sourdough just 30 minutes after opening. Meanwhile, across town, other bakeries were throwing away unsold bread at the end of each day. The inefficiency of it all had struck me, the disconnect between supply and demand. The waste, the missed opportunities for both bakers and customers. I had outlined a platform that would connect small independent bakeries with consumers, allowing for pre-orders, delivery options, and production planning based on actual demand rather than guesswork. The system would use predictive analytics to help bakeries optimize their baking schedules and ingredient orders, reducing waste and increasing profits. Additionally, it would create a marketplace where consumers could discover specialty breads and bakeries beyond their immediate neighborhood. At the time, I'd done some preliminary market research that looked promising. The artisanal bread market was growing steadily, with consumers increasingly willing to pay premium prices for quality products. Yet most small bakeries were still operating with antiquated systems, paper orders, cash registers, and gut instinct rather than data. I pulled out my laptop and began updating my research. The trends had only accelerated since my initial investigation. The pandemic had forced many small food businesses to adopt technology, but most were using cobbled-together solutions that weren't designed for their specific needs. There was still a gap in the market for a specialized platform built from the ground up for bakeries. As morning light began to filter through my blinds, I realized I'd been working through the night. My notes had expanded into a comprehensive business plan, including revenue projections, development timelines, and marketing strategies. For the first time since losing my job, I felt energized, focused, purposeful. The question now was how to fund it. My severance package from Innovate Tech had been generous, 3 months' salary plus accrued vacation time. But between rent, car payments, and basic living expenses, it wouldn't last forever. I had some savings, but not enough to live on while developing a new platform from scratch. I needed to be strategic. First, I calculated the minimum amount I needed to live on each month if I cut all non-essential expenses. Next, I estimated how long development would take if I did most of the coding myself. Finally, I looked at what seed money I would need for legal fees, cloud hosting, and a minimal marketing budget. The numbers were tight but not impossible. If I was careful, my savings and severance could fund about 8 months of development before I'd need outside investment or revenue. It was a risk. If the platform failed, I'd be broke with a gap in my employment history. But for the first time in my professional life, the potential reward seemed worth the risk. My next step was to connect with people who could help. I made a list of contacts from my years in tech, former colleagues, friends in adjacent industries, connections who might provide advice or introductions. At the top of my list was Daniel Reyes, my college roommate, and now head baker at Brickhouse Bakery, the very place where the idea had first sparked. Daniel knew the industry from the inside, and had often complained about the lack of tech solutions designed for small bakeries. I texted Daniel that morning asking if he'd meet me for coffee. His response came within minutes. "About time you reached out. Was getting worried about you. Coffee tomorrow at Brickhouse. Before we open 5 a.m. Bring your appetite." The following morning, as most of the city still slept, I arrived at Brickhouse Bakery. The smell of fresh bread enveloped me as Daniel let me in the back door. The kitchen was already alive with activity, bakers shaping dough, loading ovens, preparing for the day ahead. "Welcome to the bread world," Daniel said, handing me an apron. "You're not just having coffee, you're getting an education." For the next 3 hours, Daniel gave me a crash course in artisanal bread making. He showed me how slight variations in temperature, humidity, and timing could dramatically affect the final product. He explained the economics of the business, the razor-thin margins, the unpredictability of sales, the waste that ate into profits. Most days were guessing, he admitted, as we finally sat down with coffee and still warm croissants. We make what we think will sell based on past experience and gut feeling. Some days we nail it. Other days we're turning people away by 10 a.m. or throwing out dozens of loaves at closing. I outlined my BreadConnect concept, and Daniel's eyes lit up. "This is exactly what we need," he said. "Not just another point-of-sale system or delivery app, but something that understands the whole ecosystem of what we do." By the time I left Brickhouse that morning, I had my first beta tester committed and a list of other bakery owners Daniel thought would be interested. More importantly, I had insider knowledge that would make BreadConnect truly useful to its target users. Over the following weeks, I divided my time between coding and field research. During the day, I visited bakeries across the city, observing operations, interviewing owners, and refining my understanding of their needs. At night, I built the first prototype of the BreadConnect platform. The work was all-consuming. I forgot to eat, slept irregularly, and barely left my apartment except to visit bakeries. But with each line of code, each conversation with a potential user, the vision became clearer and more compelling. This wasn't just a business idea anymore. It was becoming a mission. I created a simple landing page explaining the concept and collected email addresses from interested bakeries and bread enthusiasts. The response was encouraging. Within 2 weeks, over 50 bakeries and several hundred consumers had signed up for updates. When I felt the prototype was robust enough for initial feedback, I sent it to Daniel and 3 other bakery owners who had expressed interest. Their responses were a mix of excitement and constructive criticism, giving me a clear roadmap for improvements. As the platform took shape, I began to think about funding. Using connections from my Innovate Tech days, I secured meetings with 3 angel investors known for backing food tech startups. The first 2 meetings were cordial but non-committal. They liked the concept, but wanted to see traction before investing. The third investor, Alicia Mendez, saw the potential immediately. "My father owned a bakery," she told me. "I grew up watching him struggle with exactly the problems you're solving." She agreed to review my full business plan and financial projections. As I walked out of that meeting, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's the job search going? Bread boy, mom's worried about you." I ignored it, slipping my phone back into my pocket. Marcus would find out about BreadConnect soon enough, but not until I was ready to show rather than tell. For now, I had work to do. Real work. The kind that might just turn, "You can't even afford a piece of bread," into the most ironic insult ever thrown my way. The initial euphoria of launching BreadConnect soon gave way to the harsh realities of entrepreneurship. By the 3rd month, the challenges began piling up like overproofed dough, threatening to collapse everything I'd built. My first major hurdle came from the very people I was trying to help, the bakery owners themselves. While Daniel and a handful of forward-thinking bakers embraced the concept immediately, many others viewed technology with suspicion bordering on hostility. "I've been making bread for 27 years without an app," said Franco, owner of Old World Breads, arms crossed over his flour-dusted apron. "My father taught me, his father taught him. We don't need computers telling us how to do our job." No matter how carefully I explained that BreadConnect wasn't about teaching them to bake, but helping them sell more efficiently, the resistance remained. Many saw technology as a threat to tradition rather than a tool to preserve it. Even with the bakeries that did sign up for the beta testing, implementation proved challenging. Most had limited technical knowledge, and even more limited time to learn new systems. I found myself spending hours on the phone, walking owners through basic functions, sometimes only to have them revert to their old methods when I wasn't looking over their shoulder. "It's too complicated," complained Marta from Crumb and Crust after accidentally deleting her entire inventory database. "I just want to bake bread, not become a computer programmer." Her feedback was valuable but disheartening. I designed what I thought was an intuitive interface, but clearly it wasn't intuitive enough for users with minimal tech experience. Back to the drawing board, I went, simplifying workflows and adding more visual cues, sacrificing some functionality for ease of use. Then came the technical problems. The beta version of BreadConnect crashed during a crucial weekend test with 5 bakeries, resulting in lost orders and frustrated customers. The predictive algorithm I'd developed to help bakeries anticipate demand kept recommending production levels that were wildly off the mark. The mobile app drained phone batteries at an alarming rate. Each issue required long nights of debugging and redesigning. My living room became a fortress of empty coffee cups and takeout containers as I worked 16-hour days trying to stabilize the platform. As technical challenges mounted, so did financial pressures. My careful budget projections had failed to account for unexpected expenses, legal fees for terms of service and privacy policies, higher than anticipated cloud hosting costs, and the need to hire a part-time developer to help fix critical bugs. By month 4, my bank account was dwindling dangerously. I calculated that, at the current burn rate, I had less than 2 months before I'd be completely broke. The stress began affecting my sleep, my appetite, even my ability to focus on solving the very problems that needed fixing. Reluctantly, I made the decision to sell my car, a 5-year-old Honda Civic that had been my faithful companion since my Innovate Tech days. It wasn't worth much, but the $4,000 it brought in would buy me another month of runway. Transportation became another challenge, as I now relied on public transit to visit bakeries across the city, adding hours to my already packed days. Soon after, I moved out of my 1-bedroom apartment into a tiny studio in a less desirable neighborhood, cutting my rent nearly in half. My new home was barely 500 square feet, with a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls simultaneously, and a shower that ran out of hot water after 3 minutes. But it had reliable internet and a small desk where I could work, which was all that mattered. The isolation of startup life began to take its toll as well. In the corporate world, I'd had colleagues to bounce ideas off team lunches to break up the day, even office politics to provide a distraction from work. Now it was just me, my laptop, and the increasingly urgent need to make BreadConnect viable before my money ran out. Friends stopped calling after I declined their invitations too many times. My parents left voicemails asking why I hadn't been to Sunday dinner in weeks. Even Daniel, my strongest supporter, seemed to be losing faith as the platform continued to have issues that affected his bakery's operations. "I believe in what you're doing, Jorge," he told me during a particularly difficult troubleshooting session. "But my business can't afford these kinds of disruptions. Maybe we should pause until the system is more stable." Losing Daniel as a beta tester would be a significant blow, not just practically but psychologically. If I couldn't make BreadConnect work for my biggest advocate, how could I expect it to work for anyone else? Meanwhile, my family situation grew more complicated. My parents, concerned about my drastic lifestyle changes and lack of communication, began asking more pointed questions about my break from employment. I tried to explain BreadConnect to them, but the concept seemed to confuse more than reassure them. "So you're helping people buy bread on the internet?" my father asked, brow furrowed. "Can't they just go to the bakery?" My mother was more direct. "Honey, there's no shame in taking a regular job while you figure things out. Your cousin Miguel's construction company is hiring office staff." I knew they meant well, but their lack of understanding only reinforced my isolation. And then there was Marcus, who had taken my career shift as fresh ammunition for his mockery. Through family gossip channels, I learned that Marcus had been telling relatives that I had some kind of mental breakdown and was playing with a bread website instead of getting help. The rumors eventually reached my grandmother, who called me in tears asking if I needed money for therapy. The final blow came when Alicia Mendez, the investor who had shown initial interest, emailed to decline funding BreadConnect after reviewing my complete business plan. "While I appreciate the concept and your passion," she wrote, "the current execution lacks the necessary traction metrics to justify investment at this stage. The user acquisition costs are concerning, and the retention data from your beta test indicates fundamental usability issues that need to be addressed. I'd be open to revisiting once you've achieved consistent growth with your existing users." Translation: come back when you've already succeeded, and then I might help you succeed. That night, sitting on the floor of my tiny studio, I'd sold my couch to pay for server costs. I came closer to giving up than ever before. I opened my laptop to update my resume, thinking perhaps my parents were right. Perhaps it was time to admit defeat, find a regular job, rebuild my savings, and try again someday from a position of greater stability. As the resume document loaded, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Don't know what you did to the system today, but online orders are up 30% since this morning. 5 new customers said they found us through BreadConnect. Whatever magic you worked, keep it up." I stared at the message, momentarily confused. I hadn't made any significant changes to the system that day. Opening my laptop, I checked the BreadConnect analytics dashboard and saw an unexpected spike in user activity across the platform. New customer signups had tripled overnight, and order volume was up at all participating bakeries. It took me an hour of digging through data to find the cause a food blogger with a modest but dedicated following had written about discovering a hidden gem of a bakery through this new app called BreadConnect. The post had been shared in several foodie groups, driving curious bread enthusiasts to download the app and place orders. It wasn't a massive viral moment, but it was the first organic growth the platform had seen. People were finding value in BreadConnect without my direct intervention, the holy grail of product development. I closed my resume file without saving changes. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but this small victory was enough to keep me going for another day. And sometimes one more day is all you need to change everything. The morning after the unexpected traffic spike, I woke with renewed determination. The food blogger's post had shown me something crucial. BreadConnect worked when it connected the right customers with the right bakeries. The problem wasn't the core concept, but the execution and reach. I spent the day analyzing every user interaction from the previous day's surge, identifying what had worked and what hadn't. The data showed that customers who completed orders were primarily using the app's discovery feature, searching for specific types of bread rather than specific bakeries. This was different from my original assumption that most users would already know which bakery they wanted to order from. With this insight, I restructured the app's home screen to emphasize bread types and styles with rich photos and descriptions. I reached out to all participating bakeries to improve their product imagery and details, even visiting several to take professional quality photos myself using techniques I learned from YouTube tutorials. Next, I focused on the 5 bakeries that had shown the most commitment to the platform, including Daniel's Brickhouse Bakery. Instead of spreading myself thin trying to onboard reluctant businesses, I would make these 5 wildly successful and use them as case studies. I need you to go all in with me, I told each owner. Feature the BreadConnect ordering option prominently in your shop. Train your staff to mention it to customers, and let me optimize your offerings on the platform. All 5 agreed, partly due to the recent uptick in orders, but mostly because I'd built enough trust through my persistent troubleshooting and support over the previous months. I created special promotion codes for first-time users and implemented a simple loyalty program that rewarded frequent purchases. For the bakeries, I developed a streamlined dashboard showing real-time sales data and trending products, giving them actionable insights they'd never had access to before. The results were modest at first. A 10% increase in digital orders in the first week, then 15% the next. But something important was happening. The customers were coming back. Our retention metrics improved dramatically as users discovered the convenience of pre-ordering their favorite breads and pastries. Word of mouth began to spread among both consumers and bakeries. 2 weeks after implementing the changes, 3 new bakeries contacted me about joining the platform, the first inbound interest I'd received since launching. Then came the breakthrough I hadn't dared hope for. Jennifer Torres, a reporter for the city's business journal, reached out for an interview after spotting BreadConnect stickers in multiple bakeries around town. Her article titled, "Rising Innovation: How One Tech Entrepreneur is Transforming Local Bakeries," painted BreadConnect as a David among Goliaths in the food tech space. Unlike massive delivery platforms that charge crippling commissions, she wrote, BreadConnect was developed by former tech executive Jorge Rodriguez specifically for artisanal bakeries with an intimate understanding of their unique challenges and opportunities. The article highlighted Daniel's experience. Since implementing BreadConnect 3 months ago, Brickhouse Bakery has seen a 30% increase in overall sales, with pre-orders reducing end-of-day waste by nearly BreadConnect pre-orders. 40%. The day the article was published online, my phone didn't stop buzzing with notifications. Bakery owners from across the city and even neighboring towns were signing up for demos. Consumer downloads of the app tripled overnight. More importantly, the article caught the attention of Vincent Chen, a partner at Horizon Ventures, a firm specializing in early-stage food tech investments. He emailed me directly. "Impressive work with BreadConnect. We've been watching the artisanal food space for potential tech integration plays. Let's talk." Our meeting was scheduled for the following week, giving me precious days to prepare. I worked around the clock, refining the pitch deck, updating financial projections, and gathering testimonials from successful bakeries on the platform. The morning of the meeting, I stood outside the gleaming glass building housing Horizon Ventures wearing a suit I'd retrieved from storage and had quickly altered to fit my now thinner frame. 6 months of startup stress and budget meals had left me 15 pounds lighter. Vincent Chen was nothing like I'd imagined from his formal emails. In his early 40s, he greeted me in jeans and a casual button-down, immediately putting me at ease. "I ordered a loaf of sourdough from Brickhouse through your app this morning," he said as we sat down. "Picked it up on my way to work. Still warm." Impressive experience all around. The meeting I'd allocated an hour for stretched to nearly 3, as Vincent dug into every aspect of BreadConnect, the technology, the business model, the vision for growth. His questions were pointed but fair, focusing, particularly on how the platform could scale beyond our city, while maintaining the personalized experience that made it valuable to small bakeries. "Here's what I'm thinking," Vincent said finally. "We're prepared to offer $2 million in seed funding for 20% equity with the option to lead your Series A if certain growth metrics are met." The number hit me like a physical force. $2 million. After months of counting every penny, of wondering if I could afford another week of development, the figure seemed almost unreal. "There's one condition," Vincent continued. "This needs to be your full focus. We're investing in you as much as the platform. We need Jorge Rodriguez 100% committed, not Jorge Rodriguez who might jump back to corporate tech if a good offer comes along." "BreadConnect is my future," I assured him, and I meant it. The months of struggle had transformed what began as a rebound project into a genuine passion. The deal closed 3 weeks later after due diligence and paperwork that seemed to multiply daily. The first tranche of funding hit my business account on a Tuesday morning. I stared at the balance for a full minute, still not quite believing it was real. My first actions were practical, paying myself a modest but livable salary. Hiring 2 developers I'd worked with at Innovate Tech, who had also been laid off, and securing proper office space. Nothing fancy, but a significant upgrade from my studio apartment desk. With resources behind it, BreadConnect evolved rapidly. We expanded to 30 bakeries across the metropolitan area within 2 months. The predictive algorithm that had once been problematic now had enough data to become remarkably accurate, helping bakeries reduce waste by anticipating demand patterns. 4 months after the funding, we were invited to present BreadConnect at Food Tech Forward, the country's largest food technology conference. Standing on stage before hundreds of industry professionals, I demonstrated how our platform was not just facilitating sales, but preserving the artisanal bread tradition by making small bakeries more financially viable in an age dominated by mass production. The presentation earned us coverage in national food publications and technology blogs. Downloads accelerated, and inquiries came in from bakeries in cities across the country. Then came the validation I hadn't even dreamed of. BreadConnect won Most Innovative Food Platform at the annual Digital Food Awards, beating out competitors backed by hundreds of millions in venture capital. Accepting the glass trophy on stage, I thought of that family dinner just 8 months earlier, of Marcus's contemptuous laughter, of the words that had cut so deep. "You can't even afford a piece of bread." But I didn't feel the sweet satisfaction of revenge I might have expected. Instead, I felt something closer to gratitude. That painful moment had been the catalyst for creating something valuable, something that was helping real people preserve their craft and connect with customers who appreciated their work. As I returned to my seat, my phone vibrated with a new email notification. The subject line read, "Urgent. Need to talk, Marcus." I slipped the phone back into my pocket without opening the message. Whatever crisis my brother was facing would have to wait until tomorrow. Tonight was for celebrating how far BreadConnect had come and dreaming about how much further it could go. I didn't check Marcus's email until the following morning. The awards after-party had gone late, and with a mild hangover clouding my judgment, I wasn't in the mood for whatever criticism or backhanded compliment Marcus might have to offer. Curiosity won out. I opened the message while waiting for my coffee to brew. "Jorge, need to talk as soon as possible. Financial situation urgent. Please call, cell, or home, anytime." The brevity and desperation were so unlike Marcus's usually verbose, self-important communication style that I read it twice to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. No explanation, no pretense, just a naked request for help. I set my phone down without responding. Part of me, a part I wasn't particularly proud of, felt a spark of satisfaction. After years of Marcus looking down on me, the tables had apparently turned. But another part felt concerned. For all our differences, he was still my brother. Over the next few days, the calls began. First to my cell phone, which I let go to voicemail, then to the BreadConnect office number, which my new administrative assistant fielded with professional vagueness. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rodriguez is in meetings all day. May I take a message?" After the fifth call in 2 days, my assistant approached my desk with an uncomfortable expression. "Your brother called again. He sounds stressed. Said it's a family emergency." I sighed, weighing my options. "If he calls again, tell him to email me the details of this emergency." The email arrived within the hour. "Jorge, I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. Westridge Financial is under federal investigation. All executives' assets are frozen pending the investigation. Can't access any accounts. Rebecca took the kids to her parents. Need temporary loan to cover legal fees and basic expenses. Will pay back with interest once this misunderstanding is cleared up. Please call to discuss amount. Marcus." So that was it. The rumors I'd heard months ago about troubles at Marcus's firm had apparently exploded into a full-blown crisis. A quick online search confirmed the basics. Westridge Financial was under investigation for accounting irregularities and potential securities fraud. No executives had been formally charged yet, but the company's stock had plummeted, and regulatory authorities had taken the rare step of freezing personal assets while the investigation proceeded. I closed my laptop, unsure how to feel. The irony wasn't lost on me. My financially successful brother now couldn't afford a piece of bread himself. But I took no joy in his downfall. Whatever Marcus had done, or more likely whatever his superiors had done while he looked the other way, the consequences were now affecting his family too. As I debated my response, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Have you spoken with your brother? He's going through a difficult time." That evening, as I walked through the farmer's market near my new apartment, a significant upgrade from the tiny studio I'd lived in during BreadConnect's early days, I spotted my mother examining tomatoes at a produce stand. This wasn't her usual market. She lived across town. Her accidental appearance in my neighborhood was about as subtle as her text message. "Mom," I called, approaching her with a smile. "What brings you to this side of town?" She embraced me tightly, then held me at arm's length, examining me with the critical eye only mothers possess. "You've lost weight again," she said. "Are you eating properly with all this bread business keeping you busy?" We settled at a small cafe bordering the market. After brief catching up about her garden and my father's golf game, she got to the point. "Your brother is in serious trouble, Jorge." I nodded. "I know about Westridge. I saw the news." "It's worse than the news," she said, lowering her voice, though no one around us was listening. "The investigators are looking at him specifically. Something about client accounts he managed directly. He could face criminal charges." The seriousness in her voice gave me pause. This wasn't just about frozen assets and temporary embarrassment. Marcus could be facing real legal consequences. "He's been trying to reach you," she continued, stirring her tea needlessly. "He's too proud to say it, but he needs your help. Not just financially. He needs someone who understands the technology side of things." I raised an eyebrow. "The technology side?" "The investigation involves some kind of automated trading system. Marcus doesn't understand how it works, only that his name is on the documentation. He thinks they're making him a scapegoat for technical problems he couldn't have known about." That sounded like Marcus, always ready to shift blame. But there was a grain of plausibility there too. Financial technology was complex, and executives often signed off on systems they didn't fully understand. "I'll think about it," I promised her. "But Mom, he hasn't exactly been supportive of me over the years." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I know, mijo, but you're not him." Those 4 words stayed with me as I walked home. "You're not him." My mother knew exactly what she was saying. that the petty cruelty Marcus had shown me wasn't in my nature, that holding his past behavior against him now would make me more like him, not less. When I got home, I found 3 missed calls from Marcus on my cell phone and another message from an unknown number that turned out to be his wife, Rebecca. "Jorge, it's Rebecca. I know things haven't always been good between you and Marcus, but he's desperate. The kids ask about him every day. Please call him back." I sat on my couch staring at my phone for a long time. Finally, I composed a text message to Marcus. "No more bread." It was petty, I knew that. But after years of his mockery, I allowed myself this one small moment of reciprocal cruelty. I would help him. I had already decided that much, but I wanted him to feel just briefly what it was like to be on the receiving end of dismissal. His response came immediately. "Please. I'm begging you." I didn't reply. The next morning, I asked my assistant to clear my afternoon schedule. "Family matter," I explained, when she looked concerned. At 2 o'clock, I walked into the lobby of my office building to find Marcus waiting, sitting stiffly on a bench near the security desk. He stood when he saw me, and I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the immaculate suit, the confident posture, the perfectly groomed appearance. This Marcus wore wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt that hung loosely on his frame. His face was haggard with several days' worth of stubble and dark circles under his eyes. "Jorge," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for seeing me." I nodded toward the elevators without speaking. We rode to the 4th floor in uncomfortable silence, then walked down the hallway to the BreadConnect offices. The space was modest but modern, with an open floor plan and large windows overlooking the city. My team of 12. Developers, marketers, customer support specialists glanced up curiously as I led Marcus to the small conference room. Water I offered as we sat down. He nodded gratefully. "Your office is nice. Very. Tech." I placed a bottle of water in front of him. "What exactly do you need, Marcus?" He took a long drink before answering. "I'm in trouble. Serious trouble. The feds think I knew about the algorithm manipulations. They think I authorized changes to the trading system that effectively skimmed from client accounts." "Did you?" His eyes flashed with momentary anger, then dulled again to desperation. "No. At least not knowingly. I signed off on technical updates I didn't understand. The tech team said they were optimizations efficiencies. I trusted them. It was a plausible story. Marcus had always been more focused on relationships and deal-making than technical details. It was entirely possible he'd been set up as the fall guy for more technically savvy conspirators. "What do you need from me?" I asked again. 3 things, he said, counting on his fingers. First, a loan. 10,000 would get me through the next month. My lawyer is working pro bono for now, but I need to cover basic living expenses. Everything's frozen. Credit cards, bank accounts, investment accounts. I'm literally sleeping on a friend's couch. I nodded. And second, your technical expertise. My lawyer says, if we can prove I couldn't have understood the algorithm well enough to manipulate it, we can shift focus to the actual perpetrators. You could review the code, explain in court what it would take to understand it. It was a reasonable request. I had enough background in financial technology to provide that kind of expert assessment. Third, I prompted. Marcus hesitated, then met my eyes directly for the first time since we'd sat down. A job, even a temporary one. The court looks more favorably on defendants who are employed contributing to society. And I need something to put on my resume after this is over, something that shows I didn't just disappear during the investigation. I leaned back in my chair, studying my brother. The request for employment surprised me more than the money or the technical help. Marcus had always been dismissive of my work, especially BreadConnect. Now he was asking to be part of it. What skills do you have that would benefit a food tech startup? I asked. He shifted uncomfortably. I'm good with people, client relationships, sales. I could help sign up new bakeries or negotiate partnerships. I almost laughed at the thought of Marcus with his luxury car and designer suits trying to convince skeptical bakery owners to join our platform. But then again, sales was sales. The basic principles weren't so different whether you were selling financial services or tech solutions. Before I answer, I said I want to know something. That night at the anniversary dinner when you said I couldn't even afford a piece of bread. Why? We've had our differences over the years, but that was cruel even for you. Marcus looked down at his hands. I was jealous, he admitted quietly. Jealous, I repeated, sure I'd misheard. Of what I'd just lost my job. I was living on savings. Of your freedom, he said. Your options. I saw it in your eyes when you talked about your bread app idea. You were excited, passionate. I haven't felt that way about my work in, I can't remember how long. He shook his head. I've been trapped in a career I chose at 22. Because it impressed people. Gold handcuffs, they call it. Too much money to walk away, not enough fulfillment to be happy. I sat back, genuinely surprised by his candor. So you mocked me to make yourself feel better. I mocked you because seeing you excited about starting over made me realize how stuck I was. And then look what happened. You built something real. Something that helps people while I was unwittingly involved in screwing over our clients. He gave a bitter laugh. Karma's a bitch, isn't it? For a moment I saw Marcus not as my antagonistic older brother, but as a broken man coming to terms with the emptiness of the path he'd chosen. It didn't excuse his behavior, but it made it more comprehensible. I'll help you, I said finally. The money is a loan with a formal agreement and interest. I'll review the trading algorithm and testify if needed. As for the job, I paused, considering. We're expanding to new cities. We need someone to manage bakery outreach in the Phoenix market. It's entry-level, with entry-level pay. You'd report to our head of growth, not to me directly. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. I'll take it. Whatever it is, I'll do it. There's one more condition, I added. You need to understand what BreadConnect really is, what we're trying to build. Let me show you around. I led Marcus through the office, introducing him to team members and explaining their roles. I showed him the developer area where our engineers were improving the predictive algorithms that helped bakeries optimize production. I demonstrated the consumer app and the bakery dashboard, explaining how each feature addressed specific pain points we'd identified. As we walked, I could see his perception shifting. What he had dismissed as a bread website was revealing itself as a sophisticated technology platform that was genuinely changing how small businesses operated. Our tour ended in the kitchen area where a large table displayed samples from various partner bakeries, sourdough loaves, artisanal baguettes, specialty pastries. Every Friday, our bakery partners send over their signature items, I explained. The team tastes everything, provides feedback, and gets a tangible reminder of who we're serving. I handed Marcus a piece of dark rye from one of our newest partners. He took a bite, and something like wonder crossed his face. This is incredible, he said. I've never had bread like this. That's from a 70-year-old bakery that was on the verge of closing before joining our platform, I told him. Now they're booked solid with pre-orders 3 days in advance. The owner's granddaughter runs their BreadConnect presence and has brought in a whole new generation of customers. Marcus nodded slowly, taking another bite. I get it now, he said quietly. This isn't just about selling bread or making an app. It's about preserving something valuable. In that moment, looking at my brother standing in my company's kitchen holding a piece of artisanal bread with newfound appreciation, I realized something important. My success wasn't about proving Marcus wrong or getting revenge for his mockery. It was about proving myself right. About my abilities, my vision, my values. No more bread, I said, echoing my text message. He looked up, confusion and hurt flashing across his face. That's what I texted you, I clarified. But I was wrong. There's always more bread. The question is whether you're willing to learn how to make it yourself instead of just taking it from others. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. I'm ready to learn, he said simply. And somehow, despite everything, I believed him. 1 year later, our parents hosted another anniversary dinner. Unlike the previous year's restaurant celebration, This was a casual backyard barbecue at their home. String lights hung from trees, casting a warm glow over the gathering as evening approached. Family members mingled, holding paper plates piled with food and plastic cups of my father's famous sangria. I arrived carrying 2 large bakery boxes tied with BreadConnect branded ribbon. Inside were assortments from 6 different partner bakeries, sourdough from Brickhouse, cinnamon rolls from Sweet Wheat, focaccia from Bella's, and other specialties that had become fan favorites on our platform. "Here comes the bread man," my cousin Sophia called, as I set the boxes on the buffet table. "Jorge, your app saved my morning routine. I never have to wait in line at Brickhouse anymore." I smiled, still somewhat surprised by how many family members had become active BreadConnect users. What had begun as polite support had transformed into genuine enthusiasm as they experienced the convenience and quality the platform provided. The past year had been transformative for BreadConnect. We'd expanded to 17 cities across the Southwest, with plans to enter the Chicago market by year's end. Our user base had grown to over 200,000 active customers, and we'd just closed a Series A funding round that valued the company at $40 million, 20 times what it had been worth just a year earlier. More important than the financial metrics was the impact we were having. 37 bakeries that had been considering closure before joining our platform were now thriving. We'd helped create over 200 new jobs across our partner businesses, and we'd preserved artisanal baking traditions that might otherwise have been lost to mass production. As I arranged the bread display, I spotted Marcus across the yard helping our father with the grill. He wore jeans and a casual button-down, a far cry from the designer suits he'd once considered essential to his identity. His hair was slightly longer, his face more relaxed, despite everything he'd been through. The federal investigation had concluded 6 months earlier, with my technical testimony helping to establish his limited understanding of the trading algorithms. Marcus had avoided criminal charges. He'd agreed to a settlement that included a fine and a 5-year ban from the securities industry, a painful professional consequence, but not the prison sentence he'd feared. True to my word, I'd hired him to manage bakery partnerships in Phoenix. To everyone's surprise, especially mine, he excelled in the role. His sales experience translated well to bakery recruitment, and his financial background proved useful in helping bakery owners understand how BreadConnect could improve their bottom line. More surprising was how he'd embraced the company culture. The Marcus, who had once mocked my bread website, now spoke passionately about artisanal baking traditions and the importance of supporting small businesses. He'd even started baking at home, sending me photos of his increasingly successful sourdough experiments. As I finished arranging the bread display, Marcus approached carrying 2 bottles of beer. He handed one to me and clinked his bottle against mine. "To bread," he said with a small smile. "To bread," I echoed, taking a sip. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching our extended family enjoy the evening. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Too much history existed between us for that. But it had evolved into something I wouldn't have thought possible a year ago. A genuine, respectful connection based on shared work and mutual understanding. "I've been meaning to tell you," Marcus said, lowering his voice. "I got an offer from Landmark Financial last week. Senior VP position, starting at 200,000 plus bonuses. They're willing to hire me as soon as my industry ban is lifted." My stomach tightened involuntarily. "Are you going to take it?" He looked at me with surprise. "Of course not. Why would I go back to that world? I'm building something meaningful at BreadConnect. Besides," he added with a self-deprecating smile, "I'm better at selling bread than I ever was at selling financial products. At least bread is honest. You can see and taste exactly what you're getting." Relief washed over me, followed by a wave of appreciation for how far he'd come. The old Marcus would have jumped at the chance to return to his former status. This new version had different priorities. As dinner wound down and family members began to depart, Marcus cleared his throat and asked for everyone's attention. I tensed, unsure what he was about to say. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight to celebrate Mom and Dad." He began, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of emotion. "But I also want to take a moment to say something that's long overdue." He turned to face me directly. "Jorge, a year ago at Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner, I said some cruel things to you. I mocked your ideas and your situation when you were going through a difficult time. I was wrong. Not just about you, but about what really matters in life. The yard fell silent. Our family members exchanged glances, aware of the tension that had existed between us, but surprised to hear it addressed so openly. Working with you at BreadConnect this past year has taught me more than I learned in 15 years on Wall Street, Marcus continued. You built something real, something that helps people and preserves traditions worth preserving. You didn't do it to prove anyone wrong or to get rich quick. You did it because you saw a need and knew you could meet it. I felt a lump forming in my throat as he spoke. I'm sorry for how I treated you, not just that night, but for many years before that. And I'm grateful that when I needed help, you chose to be better than I had been. His voice cracked slightly. You could have turned me away and no one would have blamed you. Instead, you gave me a chance to learn and grow. That's a kindness I won't forget. Our mother wiped tears from her eyes. Our father stood straighter, pride evident in his posture. The rest of the family remained respectfully silent, witnessing a healing that had been long in coming. Thank you, I said simply when Marcus finished. Words felt inadequate for the moment, but they were all I had. Later, as I was helping clean up, my grandmother pulled me aside. At 84, she moved more slowly than she once had, but her mind remained sharp as ever. You know, she said, patting my arm, when I was a girl in Mexico, my father was a baker. He woke at 4 every morning to make bread for our village. It wasn't fancy, just simple bolillos and pan dulce. But people came from miles around because his bread had something special in it. I nodded, having heard versions of this story throughout my childhood. I asked him once what his secret was. She continued. Do you know what he said? Patience. Not special flour or secret ingredients. Just patience. He said good bread couldn't be rushed, that it needed time to become what it was meant to be. She squeezed my hand. People are like that too, mijo. Even the difficult ones, like your brother. With patience, they can transform. As I drove home that night, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. The past year had indeed been a transformation. For BreadConnect, for Marcus, and for me. What had begun as a desperate attempt to rebuild my career after a public humiliation had evolved into something far more meaningful than mere professional success. I had learned that true resilience isn't about bouncing back to where you were before. It's about growing into something stronger and more authentic. I had discovered that the most satisfying revenge against those who doubt you isn't proving them wrong. It's living so fully in your own purpose that their opinion becomes irrelevant. And perhaps most importantly, I had found that forgiveness, even of those who seem least deserving, liberates you more than them. By choosing to help Marcus rather than abandon him in his time of need, I had freed myself from the resentment that might otherwise have shadowed my success. The company continued to grow, expanding to new cities and helping more bakeries thrive. Marcus became an integral part of the leadership team. His transformation from finance shark to passionate advocate for small businesses so complete that new employees would never have guessed his former life. As for me, I found peace in building something meaningful and preserving traditions worth saving, and in the knowledge that success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you create. Sometimes when visiting one of our partner bakeries early in the morning, I watch the bakers working their magic. Hands covered in flour, moving with practiced precision, transforming simple ingredients into something nourishing and beautiful. In those moments, I'm reminded of what my grandmother said about patience and transformation. The most important loaves take time to rise. The most meaningful growth requires patience. And sometimes the sweetest success comes from the situations that once seemed most bitter. Have you ever had a moment when someone's cruel words actually pushed you to achieve something great? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more about turning setbacks into opportunities. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift. It gives you the space to rise beyond anyone's expectations. Thank you for listening. And remember, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's baked fresh daily with passion and purpose.